Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. It is Tuesday, the 12th of September, 2017, and yet still I don't know where this year is going. But it's lovely and dark and overcast here in sunny Sheffield. Whatever it is where you are, I hope you've had a great day today. Right, well, let's start out. I just want to make a bit of an announcement. You've just heard our intro. Now, the chap that made that intro, recorded it, wrote it, and everything, he's my best friend from school from many, many years back. We even took the school out on strike at one point, and as you can probably tell, I'm trying to associate myself with him a little bit more and try and bask in his glory, because he's won a competition. He's written a song. Sorry, the SoundCloud took the school the Sounds of Summer contest, and there were 500 people that uploaded songs, and today it's been announced that his song Summer Rain has come first, and he's won $1,000 worth of stuff, and it's a great song as well. If you want to get onto, I'm sure somebody will post a link in the chat room to it, but here's what it says about the jury's decision on his song. It says, the winner of the contest stood out among the submissions quite undisputably. Heath Dueth's just under 3 minutes track planted its originally recorded vocal hook directly into our memory. The chill out and the rock sound pools were creatively integrated, and the little rap sequences lent the feeling of a perfect summer hit, all of which is combined in a well-balanced mix. And we hope you enjoy and turn up the volume and sing along. So congratulations to Heath. I'm absolutely thrilled for you. It's fantastic. You're getting some recognition at last. I mean, you've done some great songs for us. So check out any of Heath Dueth's songs. They're all fantastic. There's some truther songs in there. There's also some songs where he takes piss out of me and I'm involved in them and all that sort of thing. But yeah, check out. Congratulations, Heath. Everybody here at Raconteurs News. Everybody, I'm sure, who's listening, I know there's many listeners that do really like your songs. So congratulations from the bottom of our heart, and every success for the future. It took a bit of time, but you got a bit of recognition. Oh, anyway, congratulations to him. So I want to get on to tonight's show. We haven't got much. We've got a couple of hours, and I think we've got plenty of things to talk about. So I'd like to welcome our guest. He's an author, a radio presenter, and also a former hospital porter against the New World Order. We all know him as Bedge, but you know him as Ben Emlyn-Jones. Good evening, Ben. How are you doing?
Hi, Jason. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm smashing. I'm smashing. Yeah, with the great news today about Heath.
Yeah, congratulations to Heath.
Really thrilled for him. So, what's happening in space?
Well, all kinds of things. Solar flares galore. There seems to be like thousands and thousands of them. They're very, very high-powered ones. I do keep an eye on these things. On my own radio show, I do regular reports on what's going on up in space. On the subject of UFOs, is that what you meant? Do you want to know about UFOs?
Well, actually, while we're on the subject of the solar flares, do you think they've got any correlation between the solar flares and the hurricanes that have been happening recently, and the earthquakes that seem to have been clustered at the moment? I
don't know. I mean, it's whether there is a correlation between one and the other. I'm not sure. I mean, the sun tends to go through cycles, so it'd be quite easy to track the emergence of extreme weather and earthquakes and see if they correlate with the activity in the sun. So that's I can't answer you, but that's a research project that wouldn't be hard to carry out.
No. So go on then. UFOs, on the UFO front. And I know you're speaking this weekend, aren't you, at the UFO Conference?
I am.
Home for the UFO Truth Conference, Gary Heseltine's one. But give us some sort of idea of what is new in the UFO world.
Well, obviously, you mentioned the conference, the UFO Truth Magazine Conference. It's the 6th, I think, no, the 5th, or is it the 6th International UFO Conference? Should be great fun, starting on Saturday. I'm speaking there, a lot of other guys speaking there. And so that's the place to go. I think if you want to know more about UFOs, it's almost sold out. There's a few tickets left, so if anyone wants to go along, please do. As for what I've heard, well, I met a very interesting chap actually a couple of months ago at an event, and he's recently been featured in an article in UFO Truth magazine. Now he is a chap who is a deep sea diver, and this is a very, very specialized job. It's an extremely dangerous job. Basically, you've got to know exactly what you're doing, or you're dead. It's that simple.
Of course.
And so he's not the kind of guy who would, for instance, get drunk on duty, or take hallucinogenic drugs, or be allowed anywhere near some of the more crucial elements of his job if he was suffering from any kind of mental illness. Well, his job actually was to look after oil rigs in the North Sea. And he dived very, very deep, over 200 feet down. And this was a kind of thing where he basically had to go – well, he had to live in a high-pressure chamber even when he wasn't in the sea, because his body had to be adjusted to the extreme pressures of the deep. And he was actually working on doing some maintenance work on the seabed where the oil comes out and it gets pumped up to the top. Think about that next time you fill your car. And he saw this strange object. This strange object came out of him, out of the sea, and it was covered. It had green lights all the way around it. And he reported this. And he wasn't exactly told not to say anything, but I get the impression he got the feeling that the climate of his profession meant that it'd be best if he kept his mouth shut about it. Yeah, so he didn't really tell anyone.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but I met the guy actually. He seems to be a very sane and quite normal chap. Had a long conversation with him, and I've got every reason to believe what he's saying. He has no incentive for making it up. In fact, he's now retired, but his profession would lead me to believe that it'd be better if he didn't make things like this up. It'd be much better from him. It'd be a much better strategy of living if you just do not say things like this, unless they're true. So, like many UFO witnesses, in this case, it's USO, underwater unidentified submerged object, which is like a UFO except it's seen under the water. And these are
when you say it came out of the sea. Obviously, he's under the sea. Did it come out from the distance, or did it come from under the seabed?
Oh, he was actually on the seabed when he saw this. He was actually on the seabed, and this thing was flying, basically drifting through the sea towards him, and he was 225 feet down. Okay. He was on the bottom of the sea, and this thing came towards him, and he saw it. This is a USO. Now, these are quite common. I mean, they're obviously less common than UFOs, but that could be simply because not many people go down into the sea. But they have been reported by divers, by submarine crews, by people on ships who see them come in and out of the water for quite a long time.
Where was this geographically? Which sea, and which part of this off the coast?
It was in the North Sea somewhere. One of the oil rigs that lie on basically between Scotland and Norway, across that area where there's the oil fields.
So in a quite remote area, then, obviously.
Yeah, I mean it was miles from land.
Right.
Fascinating story, absolutely fascinating. That's one of the best UFO/USO cases I've heard about lately.
Perhaps there should be a different way of describing them, because you get USO and you get. I mean, if you said USO to anybody, most lay people wouldn't even know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas UFO, they would.
You could just say UFO. I mean, it seems that the two seem to be interchangeable. In fact, there's many cases where one becomes the other. People see something underwater, it flies up into the air, or they see something flying in the air mysterious, then dives into the water. There's a famous case by Bill Cooper, the guy who wrote Behold a Pale Horse. He saw something come out of the water and go back in again. So it was both a UFO and USO. There's a very, very famous case in Canada. There's a small town on the eastern coast of Canada that has the unfortunate name of Shag Harbor. That's its name, apparently. And a large object appeared there in the late 60s. It was a yellow sausage, I think it was a sausage-shaped object or lozenge-shaped object underneath the sea. It gave off green foam So there was a pollution concern of that. They didn't know what this green foam was, but the Navy came along, sent ships up there, and then the thing disappeared, just vanished. So that's
a number of these, isn't there, around the world. There are, if you do a search, you'll find many cases around the world where people have seen or reported or even filmed things that have emerged from the sea and then flown into the air.
Yeah, there's loads of them. I mean, obviously, as with any other of these various YouTube videos of paranormal events or unusual events, there's a bit of a signal to noise ratio problem, because some of them, of course, are faked. Probably the majority are, and it's difficult to tell nowadays which are which. So that is an issue. But yeah, I've seen quite a few, and I'm sure I believe some of them are real.
Yeah, the advent of technology that we've had in the last 20 years has been a blessing, but has also been a curse as well, because the amount of people that are faking things and the more and more sophisticated that people are becoming in the software is becoming, and they're even at home, when you're at home, you can make a Hollywood production like video, can't you?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. This is caused a lot of problems. You can walk down a high street in Nairobi and pick up a video recording suite for a reasonable price that can surpass anything that the big cinema studios had 20 years ago, which means anyone making a fake UFO video or a fake ghost video or a fake Loch Ness Monster video is now extremely easy. And people do it. There's a mobile phone app that means you can create live ghost images while you're just phoning. It's very bad, really. And it's a shame that there are a lot of people who will take advantage of this to try and fool people. But it means the photographic evidence no longer carries the same weight that it used to. I do wonder, actually, if I was in a position where I had money, would I even bother photographing it at all if I ever encounter one of these things? I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure I would.
Yeah, well, because you get just for example, let's just take a famous example: the Phoenix Lights. If Phoenix Lights happen now, people will be yelling fake. Whereas,
of course, yeah.
When that happened, I think, when was it? 1997.
Yeah. Yes.
1997, when it happened, because we were still using tapes and the digital stuff, it carries more weight. So do you think that we could be potentially missing actual, real, proper, good sightings because as soon as someone puts one online, it gets shouted down as a fake?
Oh, definitely. The signal is being drowned out in noise, which is very, very sad. It's inevitable. Unfortunately, this is the problem, and there was a time. Making fake photographs has always been possible, but now it's so easy, and you can make ones that are so good. It's actually very difficult. If you know what you're doing, you can make one which is impossible to prove as fake. And if it is fake, it can look as real as the real thing, and it's just. I don't know exactly what the solution is to this, except, I personally am much more interested now in older footage. I take more of an interest in things like the Phoenix Lights videos, which were extremely interesting. There's no doubt that something real happened there. Something really unusual did happen there. There's been many attempts to say contrary, but I don't believe them. Indeed, one of the instigators of one of the major debunkers, Governor Fife Symington, has confessed and said that it's real. I just pretended it wasn't because I didn't want mass panic.
Yeah. Well, anyway, listen, we've got a question in the chat room from Andy, who you might know. I think you came runner-up to him in the UFO Mastermind.
Oh, Andy Young, yes, that's right, your co-host.
Yeah, my former co-host. He's
right.
Disappeared on me at the moment.
Oh.
I'm sure he'll be back at some point. He says, what does Ben make of the three-fingered mummy Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald flew to Peru to examine?
Right, yes.
He lost him at the weekend, but now he's good. This
is very interesting. Now, we're on tenterhooks at the moment. There's a really long drum roll going on because there's going to be an announcement at some point. It all depends how long the scientific work takes to do. But there is hopefully going to be some definitive answers on this for coming very soon. But what happened was that some strange mummies were found in South America. Now, mummies are not unusual in South America because the various cultures of if you go back through history of that continent, have created mummies in the same way that the ancient Egyptians did, the Incas, the Aztecs, etc. And so this mummy was found in the area of the Nazca Lines, which itself is very interesting because it's like some patterns on the landscape which can only be seen from high above. But this mummy was found in a tomb. There was a large, it's female and an average size woman, surrounded by 5 others, which are much less interesting. It seems they are some kind of model or whatever. But
I must warn you, Ben, can you please not assume that it's a female? It might identify as a goose.
Oh, I've triggered somebody now. Sorry. My goodness. There'll be placard-waving students outside my house next tomorrow morning. And, but this is, again, is it even, well, to say female, I mean, I say it's a woman, but that implies it's human. And, now, this has come into the hands of a scientific research group in Peru, which is where the Nazca Lines are. And one of them was Jaime Maussan, the famous ufologist from Mexico. Several other people have been involved. And Steve Mera, who's a good friend of mine, fellow researcher, and who works tirelessly in Britain to investigate paranormal claims. He's part of MAPIT, which is the Manchester area paranormal investigation team, and various other organizations. He decided he would go and have a look at this mummy. He asked if he could, and they said, yes, come on over. So he headed straight for Cuzco in Peru. Cuzco is the capital of the old Inca Empire. But this mummy is far older than the Inca Empire. It was carbon dated, and it was alive around about 200 to 400 AD, whereas the Inca Empire was started about 1100 in the sort of medieval times. It was destroyed by the Spanish conquest in 1600. So he went over to Cuzco, and it was all very surreal because there was an awful lot of controversy over these mummies, and it seems that the government in Peru were taking a very keen interest in it, and they were not happy that Steve was there. I mean, he suffered a number of airport delays on his journey, and when he got off the plane, his local guide said to him, don't mention anything about this on your mobile phone. Don't even send texts about it. And the obvious reason for this is that the government was monitoring his mobile phone communications. Now, Steve then had to – it was really Indiana Jones-like, actually, because Steve was staying at this place, and some people he didn't know who they were, and he wasn't given any warning of this, but some people met him and told him to get into a car. And they said, leave your mobile phone behind, for the same reason. They don't want to be traced. And they drove him high up into the Andes Mountains. And he actually got a bit sick from mountain sickness because, I mean, he lives in Manchester. You know, it's like there's not much in the way of hills there. So, but they took him to this place where he didn't know where he was. They didn't tell him where he was going. And he was shown these mummies, and he was allowed to take samples, specimens for scientific analysis, data. From the mummies, especially the most interesting one, which has been nicknamed Maria. Now, I said it's a mummy that looks like a woman. It's a female adult, yet the shape of its skull is not that of a human skull. And what's more, its hands and feet are totally different. Its hands and feet have 3 digits, and they're very, very long. So we're looking at something that, if it can be proved to be real, is some other kind of species. So Steve took some X-ray pictures and some samples for DNA analysis and things like this. He's brought them home with him. He's sent them off, and they're now that analysis has been done. I don't know how long that will take, but I'm really looking forward very much to getting the results of this, because this could be as big as the Star Child skull. I mean, if it's proven to be real. Now,
What's the alternative to it being real, though? I mean, are you suggesting it's something manufactured, or it's going to be of human origin?
Well, it can't be a human. It can't be a human, but it could be a hoax. And this is what the it's a big sensation in Peru at the moment, and the sort of skeptic equivalent of, sorry, the Peruvian equivalent of the big TV skeptics, Professor Chris French and Brian Cox. They're all over the TV. They're going, "Oh, we think it's a hoax. It's obviously some sort of hoax and something like that." The reason the mummy's being hidden is partly because they're concerned about government interference, but also black market treasure hunters might try to get hold of it.
Right.
So this is why it's being hidden in a secret location. But the current official line in Peru is that it's hoax. This is what the media are saying. It's a big hoax. And someone has simply unfortunately these hoaxes do happen, and we're all familiar with the old slides that unfortunately Jaime Maussan was involved in Mexico a couple of years ago. So unfortunately hoaxes do happen. But Steve thinks otherwise. She's very interested in this mummy Maria, the one called Maria. This mummy was in a tomb. It was in a big stone tomb. So obviously, when Maria was alive, she was somebody of some importance.
Mm-hmm.
So she was not just people. Ordinary people in those days didn't get made into mummies and put inside elaborate tombs. So she was obviously maybe a queen of some kind, or someone very, very senior political figure in that culture. But if she's not human, then what is she? Where does she come from? That's the question. Is she partly human or completely human? There's one thing for certain, that the legends of that region, the mythology, talks a lot about what we would today call extraterrestrials. It talks about gods who came down from the sky and interacted with humans, even had babies with humans. They even got married and had babies, which indicates this could be some sort of hybrid with an extraterrestrial. I mean, this is all part of it is very, very well known among the local people. These stories have been handed down for centuries. So what we could be looking at is possibly physical proof that some of these mythologies are true.
Mm. They certainly appear to be on different continents, don't they? The same sort of pictures, the same sort of land wall drawings that are in cave drawings that are on different continents that are really, really similar.
We see the same thing all over the world. Within our own culture, we see the same thing. Everyone's familiar with Genesis chapter 12. The Nephilim, the Elohim, came down from the sky, saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and took of them many wives, from whom they bore sons, who then became the men of renown. The Nephilim, the men of renown. These are extraterrestrial human hybrids. And this is repeated in other places. In southern Africa, there's a legend. There's all kinds of legends like this that I've heard. So either this is some big coincidence, or in the prehistoric times, everyone was somehow traveling vast distances to copy each other's stories, or there's some objective reality behind this mythology.
Yeah, I think I prefer that one.
Yeah.
I think I prefer that one rather than people traveling huge distances, all those years ago and drawing the same images on different caves in different continents. It just doesn't make much sense, does it?
It's by far the most likely explanation, in my view, is that there is some objective reality behind this. We don't know yet. This may not be extraterrestrial. This may be some other kind of human species that may have evolved on Earth. We don't know. We know that in the past there were things like Neanderthal men and Homo erectus, although these didn't have 3 fingers. These had, the 3-finger thing is what's really weird, because all mammals, primates, that is whether you go for the ape family, they all have, the apes, like apes and monkeys, have hands similar to ours. Even cats and dogs and things have 5 digits on the end of their finger. This is a universal kind of template of life among mammalian creatures. So to something would have 3 fingers and 3 toes, it's not like a deformity either. I mean, this is both fingers, this is both hands and both feet. And I've seen the X-ray plates that were made, the original ones, and they're just extremely odd. Because you can see like bones underneath. There's bones and knuckles and things underneath the skin.
So when do you project that we're going to have these things have gone off these samples have gone off for analysis?
Yes.
And when do we project that we might have some sort of result and some sort of idea of what it is?
I honestly don't know, because I don't know how long it takes to do these things. I don't know exactly what kinds of tests have been done. Maybe Steve, you get Steve on the show, he'll be able to give you more of an answer to that. I'm hoping to get him on my show as soon as this is all comes out. But it's hard to say. But hopefully it shouldn't be too long.
And what about the idea that these are the actual inhabitants, the original inhabitants of the Earth, and we were the aliens that were brought in to become the drones?
Well, that's certainly a feature of the Zulu culture from South Africa. That's definitely what they say. They do say that humans are effectively an artificially created race to serve what they call the Chitauri, which is like the godlike beings that existed on Earth in the ancient past, and that humans were simply created to serve them. Firstly, to mine things like mine gold and things like that, and then in any other kind of way.
And that does make sense if you think about how it does make a certain amount of sense anyway. If you think about the way that that we behave as a group, we've got a hive sort of drone mentality, haven't we? You know, if you look at some bees. A hive of bees, you've got all the drones and they're all there, and then there's the queen. We're pretty much like that, aren't we? A little bit more sophisticated than that, and a little bit more, we'd say, intelligent, but I doubt that, but a little bit more technologically advanced, you know. That does make sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is this element where you see with large groups of people, and there's been several studies done in group dynamics and things like that about how people will move in the same direction and they'll follow the one in front and things like that. And it's when you see people moving like through a big city like London, it is almost like watching the flock of birds and the way one will immediately follow the other. And this goes into all sorts of habits as well. You get like fashion clothes. When clothes become fashionable, suddenly everybody wants one. They'll suddenly fork out an awful lot of money to buy some clothes which they don't necessarily need, but they feel obliged to possess these clothes and wear them because maybe some Hollywood star is doing it. These fashions come and go. I mean, we're all familiar with changes in the way people dress, the kind of things they do, their behavior, things like that. So there was this kind of groupthink that does seem prevalent, and if you don't go along with it, you do stand out. And some people don't like standing out. Some people even feel uncomfortable if they're not too much like the crowd.
And then there's people that feel uncomfortable if they're part of the crowd, which I put myself in as well.
Well, who's it said? You laugh at me because I'm different, but I laugh at you because you're all the same. So yes, I'm certainly one of those people.
Cool. Well, listen, Andy's put in the chat room that he spoke to Steve and he reckoned they should have the results in about 2 weeks when he last spoke to him, and that was the 14th of August. So we've gone over that time now, so it should be any time now, but it all depends on where they're having him done as well, doesn't it, really? Because if somebody in a lab somewhere suddenly discovers something that they've not discovered before, they're not going to really want to they going to try and keep it to themselves.
I haven't asked. Yes. I mean, I haven't asked Steve about this because Steve hasn't given out. He certainly hasn't told me exactly what he's doing with this data, or exactly how he's having this data analysed, or by whom. But knowing Steve, I would say he's probably prepared for this eventuality, and he'll have been a bit careful about who he gets involved. I mean, helping him is Brian Allen, who's the editor of Phenomena magazine, which is basically Phenomena magazine is basically running this entire operation. And Brian is very experienced. He's about 80 years old, and he's been doing this sort of thing all his life. So he's extremely experienced. And I imagine, hopefully they'll get someone they can trust. Do you know what I mean? A scientist and a laboratory which they can trust.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's Well, we just we've got no choice, have we? Because there's no other choice. We can't do it ourselves, so you need to trust somebody, and hopefully they've got it into a place where they can trust the people that are going to do the research.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, and I imagine Stephen Bryan, this will have occurred to them. And so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But obviously, I mean, you cannot rule out some kind of suppression. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why the authorities would not like this information getting out if it turns out that this is the real thing. There's all kinds. We've already seen that already in Peru, with the way the government and media have been behaving. The fact that they've been taking interest in Steve. They've been following around. He's not been made welcome in their country. And in fact, when he actually held a press conference with the other researchers at Lima, which is the capital city of Peru, they basically booked a conference room at a hotel, and well, there's all kinds of things happened. For instance, he periscoped from there with his mobile camera, and he was doing live shows. I was following him on Facebook, and suddenly the Wi-Fi signal went down at exactly the time when he needed it. The hotel staff were very, very disruptive. They were making noise. Things like that. They were banging and hammering with all the times when this conference was going on. So it seems like some obstacles were being put in his way even then. The idea that there are no such things as extraterrestrials appears to be quintessential to our relation, the ruler's relationship with us. In other words, their ability to manage us.
Right.
So if it turns out there are extraterrestrials, which I believe there are, they won't exactly want that shouted from the rooftops. We actually have a precedent for this. We actually have a theoretical there's distinct theoretical reasons to predict such a reaction. For instance, going back a long way, in fact, going back to the start of the space program in 1959, the Brookings Institute released a report where they basically said this. They said when we get up into space. This was only just after Yuri Gagarin had got off the ground. I mean, well, it was before Yuri Gagarin. It was actually just after Sputnik. And at that time, the time it was released, nobody had actually ever ventured into space. We just sent up a dog and a couple of other satellites and things like that. And this said when humans get up into space, and if you find something that indicates there is intelligent life, or even in the past there might have been, it's not. There could be distinct social problems as a result of this news getting out.
And that was borne out in things like War of the Worlds, which came out, didn't it? I think that was predictive programming as well, that sort of made everybody think what would happen if there was an event. And usually when it comes out in these films and these entertainment outlets, usually the aliens are hostile. Yes,
in fact, in War of the Worlds, they're extremely hostile. I mean, the book was written in the late 19th century by H.G. Wells. It was adapted to a radio play in 1938 by Orson Welles, no relation, which was actually quite chilling. You can listen to it on YouTube, and it's done in the form of a docudrama. So it's almost like a fake news report. At the time when there weren't many of that kind of broadcast around, and if you're familiar with the story, it's about some aliens come down from Mars with these war machines, these three-legged war machines, which give off heat rays like laser beams, which burn up everything in their path. And they set about on a mission to destroy everything on Earth. They're only stopped at the end because they catch diseases and they die because they catch Earth diseases. But the response when this went out on the air was terrifying. People ran out into the street. They got in their cars. They raided shops and they looted supplies. Orson Welles, the director and the writer, he took the blame for it. He had to go to court and everything. But wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. I did read about it sometime that this was there were some psychologists involved in this, which does lead me to believe that this is actually possibly a test run. How would people respond if this news came out, especially if the news of hostile aliens invading came out? Mm. And since then, of course, we've had many, many other types of films in the genre. Some they vary a lot in intellectual content and technical quality, but alien invasion films are they're normal, aren't they?
What's your favourite, Ben?
Alien invasion movie?
Yeah.
Arrival. That's fantastic. That is. It's excellent. It's a perfect antidote to Independence Day. It really is.
I must check that out.
Very, very clever, very intelligently made movie, very thought-provoking.
Have you heard of, you mentioned psychologists. Now, I've been watching some lectures on YouTube from a psychologist, a guy called Jerry Roth. And he's a psychology professor in a university somewhere in America. I can't remember where, but if you can find him out. But he's recently been doing a lot of stuff on Roswell. And he says, makes the claim that when he was a new teacher, he was teaching, when he was a newly qualified teacher, I think he was about 25, 24, something like that. And he was teaching 5th grade, and a girl came in with a piece of what he described as like tinfoil. But she said, "My dad told me to bring this to show you." And she says, "Can you try and tear it?" And he couldn't tear it, and he tried to put a hole through it, and he couldn't do that. And he explains it really well. He is saying, "Is your dad okay with me doing this?" And all this sort of thing. I don't know if have you ever come across him before, because he's done some really good lectures on Roswell, and some good interviews on his experience of Roswell. But he just sort of deals with facts. Yeah. But for somebody who's in the mainstream education system, it's quite unusual how open he is about what he thinks about it.
Definitely. I mean, the story you've just told me rings a bell, actually. However, what's his name again?
Jerry Roth.
Yeah, the
Kroth.
Right. I don't recognise the name, but the story you've just told me, I've heard before. I've definitely heard it before. So I mean, it would be wonderful if some of this evidence still existed. Some of this material, for instance.
Well, apparently, there's 10 pieces of this material. There are 10 people that have said that they've come into contact with this material, and there's 10 people that had the material, and apparently he's been trying to track down for the last couple of years. He's been trying to track down the young girl who brought it to him, but he knows her name and everything, but it's been really difficult. And her, because her father, apparently he's spoken to some of her classmates that remember her, and her father was in the military and had access to high-level stuff. But he said that this piece of paper, what it did is if you bent it over, it would just flip straight out. It was like tinfoil, but if you get tinfoil and you fold it over, it stays.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it went back to its original shape. It was like a memory tinfoil type stuff, and it was impenetrable as well.
This is another witness, Jesse Marcel Jr., who recently died a couple of years ago. He actually was the son of Jesse Marcel Sr., who was the guy at the center, the intelligence officer at the 509th Bombardment Group at Roswell, New Mexico, that actually dealt with this. And he reports that when he was a little kid, his father just woke him up one night in July of 1947 and said, "Son, come downstairs and have a look at this." It was late at night. And his father showed him material that matches exactly the description that you've just given me from this teacher. Now, this, unfortunately, what happened after that was the secrecy was put in place. Major Marcel Sr., the father, was told to keep very quiet about it, and said he had to surrender all the metallic material that he gathered. But before that restriction was put in place, I imagine it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the squaddies were like just picking this stuff up and putting it in their pockets. And it might not have been possible to round up every single fragment.
Mm.
And so it doesn't surprise me that some of this is still floating around in places. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, you should check him out. Jerry Roth, he does lots of great lectures on psychology and stuff. And this is just one of those lectures that he did on Roswell. In fact, he's done a couple on Roswell.
Brilliant. Yes, I'd certainly like to look him up.
Yes, he should be great. Listen, we've got a couple of comments and stuff in the chat room. Let me just read a couple out. Hello, everyone in the chat room. If you're in the chat room, please contribute. Write down any questions that you might have. We've got from Anon7493, one world government as the fourth world, or world controlled by the world order, where there is no first, second or third worlds, just a boundaryless planet, which is called the fourth world wilderness. That's quite deep. Paul Sturm has asked a question, blue alien hoax, Ben, in question marks. And yes, Paul, blue alien bollocks, somebody else has put. More concerned with crypto-terrestrials. You'd have to enlighten me on that. And what is Ben's take on NASA continually stating that we cannot leave low Earth orbit? So let's address the blue alien thing first.
Sure.
I don't know what that is.
The blue alien hoax. Now, well, aliens that are coloured blue, I've heard of several times. There's several people who've talked about this. There's a guy called Alec Newell, a New Zealander, who's mentioned this, as has a couple of other people. I'm not familiar with any specific hoax regarding aliens of this colour. I mean, perhaps if the questioner could give me more details, I'd be able to say some more. But
so no, you don't know anything about the blue. You don't know much about the blue. It's blue interesting though. The blue alien hoax thing. If you think about the film Avatar, they were blue, weren't they?
Yeah, there was a alien that appeared. There was a blue alien that was called Blue. They nicknamed it Blue. That appeared in an experiment called the Skull Experiment, which was an attempt to reproduce a physical mediumship underneath in the laboratory conditions. This was carried out by the Society for Psychical Research, and several other people were involved in it. It was all done as scientifically as possible, and they achieved some amazing results. And one of these was images of a grey, it was like a grey alien with the strange shaped head and eyes, but it was blue, and it was nicknamed Blue. Right. I don't know if that's what this person's talking about. That could be.
Well, Andy's put in the chat room. My mate Derek Savory.
Savory.
All right.
Sorry, I know this guy. I know who he's talking about.
Has seen blue ETs at Rendlesham Forest.
He has, yeah.
So they claim.
Derek is always wandering the woods late at night, and coming up with all kinds of strange things. Some of his stories are quite incredible. Really, he's they're backed up by several other people he often is accompanied by. So, yeah, I know Derek, and he's quite an interesting chap.
Oh, excellent. Okay, what about crypto-terrestrials? Give me a skinny on them, because I've got absolutely no idea.
This is the idea that there are creatures on the Earth that have evolved independently of species as we know them. These are not extraterrestrials. These are not aliens. They are Earth creatures, but they have existed in a parallel to us and unknown to us, usually in very remote parts of the Earth. Very often they are underwater or underground. And it's possible that Maria, this mummy that Steve Mera has been investigating, is one of these. Okay. This is a possibility.
Right. So he's saying something that is terrestrial, but we wouldn't recognise.
No, we would not recognise it. It would appear very, very. If it's been evolving independently from us for, say, several million years, for example, it's possible that the three-fingered hands and feet could be an adaptation of that. Supposing it's split off from the rest of the primate family or primate group of creatures 7 million years ago or something, and it's possible that we're dealing with a creature that has been evolving independently for so long, it's become a human-like being independently of us in a remote part of the world. Perhaps in the Nazca Desert there was a colony of these creatures. I don't know, and maybe in the past they did have some contact with humans, which has now ended.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what crypto-terrestrial means. Yeah.
Well, thanks for clearing that up for me. I'm still not the wiser.
I'm such an anorak. I really am. I mean,
it reminded me of. I think there was a story yesterday I saw on the Book of Faces, where some Brazilian gold miners had just completely wiped out a tribe that had been previously not had contact with civilization, and just gone in there because they were going to do some mining, and just completely wiped them out. And they were all bragging about it in the thing. So you know, there are colonies of, we can call them people, we can call them beings, or we can call them whatever. But you know, there are things, plenty of things on this planet that we've not discovered yet already, is it? You know,
Yeah.
Even now we've not discovered.
It's a pretty awful situation, and I feel really sorry that for these people who got killed, because that's because there are groups of people who live in remote areas. I mean, these are humans just like us, but they live in remote areas and they've had no contact with the outside world. And suddenly these logging engineers and people like that, or miners in this case, suddenly walk into their area. It's a bit of for them it must be similar to an alien invasion. Because these strange people they have a different skin color, and they're racially different, and they're wearing clothes, and they have machinery. It must. Oh God, can you just imagine how they feel? And it's so sad that they killed them all. I mean, I can't. Why did they kill them all? Were they attacked, or what happened?
No, they killed them all because they wanted to mine the area.
Yeah.
And so they were confronted with all these native people, this tribe that had never had any contact with civilization before, and of course they were on the defensive, like you would be, like you just said. It's like an alien invasion for them. They don't see anything. They've not seen anything before like this, and they've just completely wiped them out. It's just. Yeah. A genocide, just so that they can mine, for diamonds or whatever that they're doing down there in Brazil. But the point I'm making is that there are people and civilizations and colonies of things and people. Who's to say there's not colonies of a different species that's pretty similar to ours, a humanoid species that is pretty similar and has similar DNA characteristics, that is lurking somewhere, hiding out of the way? Because let's face it, if I could, I'd hide out of the way of the rest of civilization, or as we call it, civilization. I'd hide out of the way and get away from them.
Yeah. Well, if you look at what has happened, like to as I said, these people have just been killed in this horrific incident. It's understandable that you would want to avoid humans like the humans we have in the world today. I mean, unfortunately, you know, our humans have done an awful lot of bad things when they encounter unusual cultures and things like that. There's many cases of genocide like this going back through history, and so it's perfectly understandable. And of course, if these extraterrestrials, or these crypto-terrestrials may very well be well aware of us, these creatures that they're sharing this earth with, and maybe actively taking steps to avoid us. That's perfectly possible.
So, Ed, listen, in the second hour, I want us to get off this subject, because we were talking before, and there's lots of different things that we different conversations, subjects that we could talk about. So I wanted to move on to them in the second hour, but to conclude this first hour, you're speaking at the UFO Truth Conference this weekend, aren't you? So
yes.
What can people expect from that? People that are attending?
Well, I'm going to be doing a speech. This is one I've not done before, and it's about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence and its connection to ufology. Now, this is I wrote an article about this in UFO Truth magazine. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence is actually something very different from ufology. It's the idea that that the universe has life out there, and I mean, no one really disputes that. It would be foolish to dispute that when you see how big the universe is. But it is not actually reached Earth. It's not. There's nothing out there that's actually reached Earth. These beings are still on their own planets, yet they can be communicated with radio signals. That's the idea, or that they are releasing some kind of a radio signal into the universe, which we can pick up. Mm-hmm. And this SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is a collective name for various different projects that are trying to locate these signals. The problem is that when it comes to UFOs, the people involved with SETI, people like Carl Sagan, Seth Shostak, Jill Tarter, people like that. They are extremely skeptical of UFOs. So there are aliens. They say, yes, there are aliens. Yes, they're out here. But they're out there. They've never come down here. They've never reached us. Whereas I, as a ufologist, would say, yes, there are aliens out there. You may contact them one day through radio waves, but really, they're already here. They found us already, and they're interacting with us.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to be talking about in my speech.
I remember SETI. I remember when, I think it was about 1999, and in my office in Huddersfield, in fact, it wasn't, it was earlier than that, it was about 1998, 97. But I remember at that time, I'd just got an ISDN line, and I went onto the SETI website, and I think they had some sort of, I think it was it must have been like an early torrent thing, but what they did is, if you allowed them to use some of your computer power,
SETI at home, yeah.
So that they could increase, if they got a little bit of computer power from everybody, then they could increase the computer power, and maybe, and I signed up to that back then.
Yeah.
And which was quite good. So what you're saying is that they're just looking for signals, and they're skeptical of the UFO phenomenon as we know it now.
Yeah, which seems strange when you think about it. And what you described was SETI at home, which I actually downloaded that as well. It's basically, like you said, the big problem with finding these signals is the signals are probably there, yet they're coming in from all directions, on all wavelengths, all frequencies, all amplitudes, and it's a question of analysing all that data.
And so whether that can be interpreted as well. I mean, it's no good getting a ton of data that can't be interpreted.
Well, it's exactly. I mean, if there is a signal out there, I mean, it's rather like trying to listen for a whisper in a hurricane, because the universe isn't absolutely. It's a mycelium. It's of radio noise. It's everywhere. This radio noise is everywhere. So the SETI home was, as you said, so they wanted ordinary people to help with this, to help analyze this data, and it's a good idea. That so I'm interested in this. It's something that genuinely interests me. The problem is, why where there's extraterrestrial craft, where there's craft flying around that are not made on Earth, that are obviously a product of an intelligence which is not human. So unless they may be crypto-terrestrials, that's a possibility. UFOs are crypto-terrestrials. Yeah, it's more likely, in my view, that they come from out beyond the Earth. So in a sense, this means they are here.
Yeah.
They found us, whatever they are. They found us, and to me, it's the SETI people are like ignoring something very, very obvious, and they're really, really reluctant to go for this. They come out with all the usual arguments, which are easily dismissed. Carl Sagan did several TV programs about this.
But listen, we've got, well, we're sort of coming towards end at first hour, but I just want to get this last question in, because somebody's posted it in the chat room. It's Webby, actually. And he has posted it a couple of times, and I did ask it earlier on, but we didn't get around to it because there were a couple of other things wrapped around it. But what is Ben's take on NASA continually stating that we cannot leave low Earth orbit?
Yeah, this is to do with the space program. Now, space program, the heyday of the space program was the first decade, really. After we had the launch of Sputnik, then we had Yuri Gagarin up in space, then there was the President Kennedy said we must land a man on the moon before the end of this decade, return him safely to Earth, and then there was the space race, and everyone was crazy about space. But the fact of the matter is, anyone from that era who was a space enthusiast, if they could have looked forward to the present day, they would gasp in dismay. The reason is because after the Apollo moon missions, that was kind of where it all ended, because we were then told, well, after we've been at the moon, we're going to go to Mars, we're going to go to Venus, we're going to go to Jupiter. You'll be able to take your holidays on the moons of Saturn by the end of the century. We'll have a permanent base on the moon by 1980. This is what they were saying. This is what they were predicting, and indeed, if the space program had continued to advance at that rate, that's exactly what would have happened. But it just stopped. It stopped, and from then on, it went. Well, there was progress made. There were some rockets launched. There were some probes sent at the outer planets. There were a few other things. Really, basically, what followed was pretty boring. There was a series of space stations by both the Soviets and the Americans. There was the Salyuts and the Skylabs and Mera, and then the ISS. There was the space shuttle, which was very impressive to look at, but really it was just simply something that went up a few hundred miles and came back down again. So we're now in a position where they're still talking about long-distance manned space missions. They're still talking. I mean, America now is saying we're going to get someone on the moon again. We're going to go back to the moon with a manned mission. Russia is saying we're going to do it too. China are now involved too. China also has a moon program, but they're saying they're dithering. They're saying, well, we need to develop a new rocket. We should be able to do it maybe by the middle of the 21st century, perhaps. Well, why was it that President Kennedy said we could do it in 10 years? And they did it within 10 years. In fact, within 12 years, they'd sent 6 successful manned lunar missions.
Do you buy that? Do you buy the lunar missions?
No.
No.
I
Okay.
don't. I don't. Thing is, I believe there's a secret space program which is very, very different, which uses very different technology. Things such as anti-gravity propulsion, free energy generation systems, craft that are far more sophisticated, indeed have been to the moon, have been to the planets, etc. They may even be on their way to some of the stars now on this big secret space program. But in terms of the public space program, the Apollo missions were as I said, this was really the climax of the public space program. Took place just 10 years after it started, and it was, I think, was staged. I think there was some.
Kubrick did it.
Sorry?
Do you think Stanley Kubrick was involved?
I doubt it very much. Now, this is something Carl James, a researcher called Carl James, has been writing a lot about. I personally, I doubt Kubrick certainly would have had the abilities, but I doubt if he would be willing. He wasn't the kind of guy who was very well known for being very anti-establishment. He was very, a lot of his films were quite recalcitrant and critical of the authorities. He was also good friends with Andrei Tarkovsky, who was a famous Russian filmmaker. And so this was during the Cold War. So it's unlikely Kubrick would have been chosen to do this. And also, he'd have done it a lot better. They wouldn't have the mistakes that you have in the actual official record of Apollo. I think the Apollo footage and the photographs were made on Earth. I think they were made in some secret location on Earth. That's a big subject, I know, but we can go into that if you like.
Well, I think it's a very interesting subject to go into. So, because there's plenty of symbology in The Shining. I think we'll get into this after the after the break. There's plenty of symbology in The Shining, and I'd like to get your take on whether you think, if you don't think that Stanley Kubrick was involved, do you think that they asked him to be involved, and that's what that was about, and it was sort of blowing the whistle on that? But we'll get into that in the second hour. We've come to the end of the first hour. I've got Ben Emlyn-Jones here on Raconteurs News, back on Raconteurs News. I think it's his 3rd or 4th visit, friend of the show. And don't forget to go to his website as well, and we'll get all that in the second hour. Let's have some records. I am knackered. It's been great, Ben. We'll just have a couple of records, and we'll come back. So please join us again in about 8 minutes, something like that. And welcome back to Raconteurs News. I hope you enjoyed them 2 tunes. David Bowie, Space Oddity. That was a live version that somebody in the chat room's not heard before. And Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me. But that's not from the album that we were talking about last night with Mark Devlin. That's from Hysteria, I think. He was talking about Pyromania. But you can find that, the Raconteurs 2 interview that I did with Mark Devlin last night. It was only an hour long, but we're talking about music and the symbolism of 9/11. Find the podcast. It's on raconteursnews.com, and get yourself registered on there as well. You know, this is what it's all about. Anyway, let's get back to tonight. We've got Ben Emlyn-Jones with us. Ben, how are you doing? Did you have a good break?
Yes, I did. Thanks. Yeah, great songs. Especially the first one is particularly apt, I think, considering the subject matter we were talking about before we went to the air.
Why do you think I chose it?
Exactly.
Well, listen, we were talking about Stanley Kubrick beforehand, weren't we? We wanted to. I asked you a question that do you think that all the symbolism for the Apollo stuff and what was it, room 347 or something like that?
Yeah.
Do you think that was because he'd been approached by NASA and rejected them? Because according to, as far as you're concerned, you don't think that he was the type of personality that would get involved in something like that?
No, unless he was somehow tricked into doing something connected to it, unknowingly. It's interesting to look at his films. Now, for instance, in 1968, he made a film called 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is one of his best known and I think one of his finest movies. Now, at the very, very same time, this was said to be an adaptation from a book by Arthur C. Clarke. Well, in fact, Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick wrote the story together, and the film and book came out at the same time. Now, it's possible that during the process of that filmmaking, Stanley Kubrick was unknowingly involved in some way with some kind of maybe some tests or some ideas or some tricks relating to what eventually came out with Apollo, because Apollo 8 went to the moon that same year. That was man's first moon mission, where they didn't land but they orbited the moon. Now, there's some similarities between what happened with Apollo and what happened in the film 2001, which is very, very suspicious. Now, Carl James knows more about this, and he said an awful lot about this, and he's written a book about it, actually, about what this might mean. But you mentioned the film The Shining. This is a film that came out in 1980, I believe, and it was a supernatural horror about a man who is some people who are in a hotel in a remote area which is closed, and they're just looking after it for the winter, and the supernatural forces in the hotel drive one of the people crazy. The man, it's a family, man, woman, and a child.
Yeah.
And they drive him crazy to the point where he becomes homicidal and he tries to kill the rest of his family. This is because of the various ghosts and creatures that live there. But there's some interesting symbolism. For example, the young boy, he wears a jumper which has a Saturn V rocket on it. It says Apollo 11. There's several other elements to it, a bit like that, which have made people wonder if Stanley Kubrick was trying to tell us something. Yeah,
there was the carpet he was playing on, wasn't it, as well, which looked from the top, it looked like an aerial picture of the landing pad at NASA. Oh, sorry, not the landing pad, the launch pad.
Yeah, there were several things like that. And I mean, this all came to a head in 2016 because a video came out. It was a film called Shooting Stanley Kubrick, which came out. That could have several meanings because some people claim that he was murdered after he brought out Eyes Wide Shut, which is a possibility. But there's this guy called Patrick Murray included. It's a really weird film. It's only an hour long, but it had some library footage of Kubrick and several of his films interspersed with an interview with a man who the director claims is a Stanley Kubrick, filmed in 1999, shortly before his death. Now, this is something. Apparently this was an interview that was put away and was told you can't look at it until a certain time period had passed, and now that time period had passed, and so this guy Patrick Murray had access to this interview. Now, the character in this interview, who actually doesn't look like Stanley Kubrick, he's an old man with a white beard and glasses. It's shot in very, very bad light. You can't make out very well what's actually going on. However, you can see quite clearly this is not Stanley Kubrick. His voice and his appearance is totally different. But this person who supposedly is Stanley Kubrick confesses to faking the moon landings just before his death, which is a very odd thing to happen. Now, several other things happened as well. A film came out called Moonwalkers. This is a comedy. It's a kind of black comedy, which is a bit of a kind of parody of the swinging '60s culture. You know, it's quite amusing, I suppose. But it is about an operation to fake the moon landings in case the real ones don't work. And the CIA, what happens is a CIA agent approaches some people, one of whom he thinks is Stanley Kubrick, to make this film, to make this fake moon landings. Thing about it is, the guy they approach is not Stanley Kubrick; he's just pretending to be.
Right.
And there's a lot of chaos ensues. Now, what happened after that was that Vivian Kubrick, who's the daughter of Stanley Kubrick, and who herself is a filmmaker, she actually made she produced a making-of documentary of The Shining. Well, during the time that her father was actually making the movie, she was doing a making-of documentary, and she responded to this, and what she said was very interesting. When this video came out with the guy with the white beard, she said, surely an artist such as my father, whose profound degree of artistic integrity is self-evident, whose political, social conscience is manifestly present in nearly every film he made, whose highly controversial subject matter literally put his life at risk, and yet he continued to make the films he made, don't you think he'd be the last person ever to assist the US government in such a terrible betrayal of its people? There are many very real conspiracies that have happened throughout our history, are happening presently. I'm only too aware of the dreadful manipulations perpetrated by government secret services, banksters, the military-industrial complex, etc. The claims that the moon landings were faked and filmed by my father, I just can't understand it. How can anyone believe that one of the greatest defenders of mankind would commit such an act of betrayal? My father's artistic work are his unimpeachable defense. Finally, my love for my father notwithstanding, I actually knew him, I lived and worked with him, so forgive my harshness when I state categorically that the so-called truth these malicious cranks persist in forwarding, that my father conspired with the US government to fake the moon landings, is a manifestly grotesque lie. And she makes a lot of good points there. He is, for reasons I explained just before the break, he is somebody I don't think would do something like faking the moon landings. What's interesting about her tweet, or her open letter, which she did tweet, she at no point does she suggest that the idea that the moon landings were faked itself is grotesque and a manifest lie. All she says is that her father was not involved. So it's what she doesn't say as opposed to what she says, which I find most interesting in her statement.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's an interesting scenario, but from what you're telling me there, it might seem that she's being a little bit ultra defensive, and instead of just laughing off, because that's how you'd expect people to do that. You'd expect them to laugh it off.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, you see, I wouldn't go as far as to say that Stanley Kubrick had absolutely nothing to do with faking the moon landings. I wouldn't go quite as far as to say that. What I would say is that he wouldn't have done it willingly. He wouldn't have done it knowingly.
Yeah.
It is possible that he, without his permission or his knowledge, some of his activities inevitably went into, perhaps at the time people were manipulating him, went into what happened with the Project Apollo. It's just when you watch 2001 and then see what happened with the moon landings, there is a kind of there's a distinct style, there's a stylistic overlap. For example, Apollo 13, this was the one which went wrong. The only Apollo mission which went wrong, actually, which is really quite remarkable when you think about it, when you consider what was done. Apollo 13 had an explosion on board, apparently, although many engineers have stated quite clearly that such an explosion would have actually destroyed the spacecraft completely, and so would have ended the mission and would have killed everyone on board instantly. But there's a famous line, Houston, we've had a problem. This is the famous line that was uttered on the radio, the radio transmission immediately after this happened. And you see the same thing you see exactly the same thing in 2001. That phrase, the computer HAL, this computer that goes crazy and ends up killing the crew. He says, "Hi Dave, we've had a problem," and it's almost the same intonation. And it's a very similar circumstance. There's lots of other things like that. There's the lighting effects you see in the studio, because there's a whole scene of the film which takes place on the moon, and you see astronauts clumping around on the moon, going into just, and it's very, very similar in terms of its lighting effect, coloration to what you actually see when you look at the Apollo missions.
Yeah, we've had a message, a question in the chat room from Webby. How you doing, Webby? I hope you're okay, mate. And I don't know if we've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask it you again. And then I've got a question that I want to ask you afterwards. Webby says, have you seen a funny thing happened on the way to the moon? And if so, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I've seen that. That's by Bart Sibrel. If I recall, a lot of the things he said were actually not quite correct. It's especially to do with some of the footage that was filmed on board the spacecraft. I don't remember it very well, actually. But he makes some of the points that I think was later proved to be incorrect. However, there's a much better documentary. There's a much better documentary that came out. It was produced by Mary Bennett and David Percy. Hang on. Yeah, that is called What Happened on the Moon, I believe.
Right.
I think it's called that. And that is an awful lot better.
What do you make of the footage that they got from NASA, which is time-stamped, where you can see that they're actually faking the Earth being quite far away?
Yeah, this is that was one of the things that both Sibrel and Bennett and Percy covered in their respective films. But Bart Sibrel said that it was just all they did was they were in low Earth orbit and they put basically a piece of card over the window with a hole cut in it, a circular hole cut in it. And what was actually filmed was simply the atmosphere of the Earth, essentially stenciled.
Yeah.
Now, Bennett and Percy say something different. They say that what was actually filmed was it was actually a picture of the Earth as it is, but it was a transparency. It was like a transparent piece of plastic that was pinned onto the window.
Okay, that's not quite how I saw it, but
is it? Okay, how did you see it? Sorry, maybe I've got that wrong.
I saw it as they were claiming that the camera was right up against the window and you could see a very small Earth in the distance. But when they actually switched the lights on, I think Neil Armstrong switched the lights on. You could see that the camera was situated quite a distance away. In fact, probably at the other side of the lunar capsule.
It was, yeah.
The window, and they put some, like you say, a stencil, but a dark stencil to make it look as though the Earth was misshapen, because then it gives it that look that you've got half a dark side at moon and what have you, and very small in the distance. But they made the mistake of putting the light on, leaving the camera running, and somebody sending that footage out when somebody made a request for it. But that's how I saw it anyway.
Yeah, that is what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the better, much better documentary is called What Happened on the Moon.
Right.
That's the documentary I consider better than a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Although both of them are worth watching.
Yeah, of course they are. And also, I wanted to ask you if you've ever seen, because a couple of times during this interview you've mentioned Yuri Gagarin. Now, there is a film that says that Yuri Gagarin wasn't the first man in space. That was a man called Vladimir Ilyushin of the Ilyushin family that made the Ilyushin planes. And he crash landed in China, and then he was held captive in hospital in China. And it was an embarrassment, and that was the reason why they never announced that he was the first man in space. But it's I can't remember what it's called.
I've heard of that.
I can't remember what it's called, but I've seen it a couple of times, and I actually saw it on mainstream TV. And the first time I saw it, I think it might have been on like one of those channels like Edge or Showcase or something like that, or PBS, because I've been watching a lot of good things on PBS America in the last few days. So I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like I wish I could I wish I could remember what it's called, but
I know the one you mean.
Really good, interesting documentary. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, people should be able to find it just by putting in Aleutian moon landings or whatever. But I have seen it, and I heard this story, and I think he died eventually. He was very badly burned. I know that he suffered burns all over his body, and I think eventually he died in the hospital or something like that. But one thing I've looked into is the possibility that Yuri Gagarin was not the first man in space, and the Soviets actually launched several space missions before Gagarin, and these ended in disaster. In one case, a fire broke out on board the capsule while it was in orbit, and this was actually a capsule with 3 people on board, and they started transmitting messages, but it was pretty disturbing. These were basically just their death throes because there was nothing they could do about it, because they were in a pure oxygen environment. They couldn't extinguish the fire, and this was picked up by an Italian radio ham operator. This guy was trying to listen he was actually listening, I think, for Sputnik 2. Which was the one with the dog, or one of the early Soviet rockets. He had his antenna pointing at the sky. He was listening for one of the just the bleeping sound of some of the early Soviet experiments with rockets, and then he heard of human voices speaking Russian. Okay. And it turns out that this indeed was another one that went wrong. In fact, there was reports of a one where a guy was launching a rocket, and he got into orbit, but then he went beyond orbit, and he ended up flying off into space. And he left Earth orbit and went up and beyond into space, where he I think died of either ran out of air or he died of radiation poisoning. But I think maybe Gagarin is technically the first man in space because he's the first one the Soviets announced, because he was the first one to survive. And it's quite likely that, and one of the big questions that's always asked of people who believe the official story of the moon landings is, well, why did the Russians let him get away with it? This was the space race. Why would they have stood back, knowing that their main rival had pulled off a coup to basically, because at the time the Soviets were the first decade of the space race. It's fair to say the Soviets had a decisive lead. They got the first rockets up, the first men up, the first woman up, the first dog up, they achieved many of the firsts, and America needed a coup. It needed something big to catch up because it was lagging behind. Why would the Russians, their rivals, have allowed them to get away with this? And the answer is that the Americans had some dirt on the Russians too, and maybe they did a bit of a deal to say, you no tell, I no tell.
Well, I'd just like to just correct you on one thing. Ilyushin didn't die in the hospital in China. I believe he spent about 6 or 8 months in hospital in China, and at that time, China and Russia were at loggerheads, and so there was a lot of negotiations that went on in order to get Ilyushin back, and Ilyushin eventually went back to the Soviet Union and was given a hero's welcome. But the whole thing was obviously behind the Iron Curtain at that time, and we didn't get the reporting that they got in Russia. But again, it could be completely wrong. It could be complete nonsense, because that's the nature of this, isn't it? It's all deceit, it's all theatre, and it's all a lot of it is lies.
Well, it'd be interesting to know what he said after he got back. If he did survive, then that'd be interesting to know. But yeah, I mean, it is, and essentially the public space program was simply a front for the secret space program. Now, this was something that has been actually, it goes back much further, the secret space program. The Nazis were experimenting with it when they came to power in Germany, because they had several people involved in this, including SS General Hans Kammler. He was one of them. There's a guy called Victor Schauberger, an Austrian, who discovered something. He discovered a free energy source involving water, and the Nazis produced a number of devices, including several flying discs and a bell-shaped craft which appeared to have an anti-gravity effect. Now, at the end of the war, when Nazi Germany was destroyed and the regime was obliterated by the victorious Allies, there was something called Operation Paperclip, which meant that the Nazi scientists went and worked for those victorious Allies. Now, the Soviet Union got some of them, Britain got some of them, but most of them went to America. Some of them became very famous, such as Hermann Oberth, Werner von Braun, the inventor of the moon rocket, the Saturn V moon rocket, which was basically just it was just an adaptation of the missiles, the V2 missiles, which he'd used to attack Britain. But some of the guys, some of them went there under false names. Some of them were listed as missing and were never recovered. And it's quite possible, it's more than likely, that this technology, the technology to build the bell, something that's called the bell, it was called the beehive, was actually sequestered by the United States and possibly the Soviet Union as well. And that was developed in secret.
Yeah. Which most things were at that time. And this, like you say, Operation Paperclip or Project Paperclip, that sort of took everybody, for all the Nazi rockets, all the pioneers, really, of rocket technology, and brought them into NASA, really.
Yeah, and they had to do it. I mean, they had no choice. They were basically told, you do this or you go to Nuremberg, and probably to the gallows. So they had to do this to save their lives.
Yeah.
And I imagine, and I think that I expect all of them agreed. And some of them, I mean, who knows what they were doing in secret? Well, we were watching rockets go up into low Earth orbit and things like that.
Yeah, well, anyway, we're with Ben Emlyn-Jones here on Raconteurs News this Tuesday night, 12th of September, and we've been chatting space so far and UFOs in the first hour, space in this hour. In this last half hour, Ben, we did speak beforehand of some other subjects that you wanted to get into. Why don't you bring one of them up, or two even? Sure.
Well, we have a situation where there's been a lot. It's in terms of the royalty.
Yep.
There's been a large amount of there's a lot to talk about there, because well, several things have happened regarding the royal family lately, and one of those is, of course, it's the 20th. Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Testing.
Yeah. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can
yeah.
hear
Can you hear me? Right. Yeah. It's the 20th anniversary of the death of Diana. Now, Diana, of course, died on August the 31st, 1997. She crashed. Well, allegedly, the official story said she crashed in a car. She was killed in a tragic accident where she crashed in her car. And this is. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, no worries. According to this, it was a tragic accident. Of course, people do crash in cars. Nick Pope has actually written an article about this, making this very point. He made the point. He said that basically, the only reason people are making a fuss about Diana is because she was famous. The fact of the matter is, people get crashing cars all the time, and if Diana wasn't so famous, no one would be bothering. But the fact of the matter is, there's distinct evidence to suggest we should be more than suspicious, and we should reject the official story that this was the official story that this was simply a
drunk driver.
A drunk driver. That's it.
Was driving too fast. They were trying to get away from paparazzi. Complete load of bollocks, in my opinion.
Yeah. Totally. Now, I was actually on another radio show. I was on the Christopher Everard show on True Frequency Radio. Can you still hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Sorry, my Skype app he's doing funny things. So as long as you can still hear me, that's all right.
We can still hear you.
Great.
Loud and clear.
Great, brilliant. So on August the 20th, I appeared on that show, and I said, don't be surprised if there is some major announcement during the next couple of weeks from the royal family, because this is the 20th anniversary of Diana's assassination. Right. The reason is because this is what I call an informational choke point. We are actually when there's an anniversary, a decade anniversary, people start looking at things again, and an attention of certain events rises up in the public consciousness. Now, public consciousness is something that has to be controlled very carefully in order to keep this secret where it is. So I said that there would be something would happen which would alter that public consciousness or direct it in a certain way to get the secret keepers through this informational choke point. And what I said was, I gave a few examples. I said the Queen abdicating, Prince Philip dying, or Princess Kate, having another baby, or announced that she's going to have another baby. Therefore, it was no surprise when the Monday afterwards, it was or the Monday 2 weeks after that. That is the Monday after the anniversary. It was announced that she was pregnant with her third baby.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is not because I'm psychic. I'm not clairvoyant. It's just because I do look for the signs of the hidden hand. I've been studying it for a long time. I tend to spot its signs, and I know some of its tactics. This is why I made this prediction. So Kate is now having another baby, or that's what we've been told. I don't know. Yeah. They may be growing it in a test tube. I don't know. Maybe, because, I mean, there's been all kinds of stories regarding the previous two babies she's had. There's reasons to believe that all is not well with her and the various babies she's had. For example, the technology may exist in secret, even if it doesn't exist publicly, to grow babies outside the womb, in the sense that it was done in the story Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing book if you want to read it. Very old, written in 1930, way ahead of its time. Possibly because Huxley was involved with the Fabian Society, like George Orwell, and knew what was coming. But it describes in detail about how babies can be grown in various in these artificial wombs, and they can be genetically engineered during the course of their development. Now, there was several things that happened. For example, she was shown in public with a pregnancy bulge, like pregnant women have, and I just thought it looked a bit odd because she didn't look like a pregnant woman. She looked like a woman with a cushion under her dress covering her belly.
Yeah,
like a beanbag or something. She wasn't leaning backwards. Pregnant women, because they have this huge mass growing at the front of their belly, they shift their center of gravity backwards by leaning backwards.
Yeah,
and this is why pregnant women often get backache a lot. Kate didn't do that. I know
that as well, because you must have dealt with many pregnant women during your time as a hospital porter.
I was a hospital porter for 23 years. 9 of those years I was actually in maternity. I was actually serving in the maternity unit at my hospital as a delivery suite porter and a lodge porter. So yeah, I've seen a lot of this, and it just didn't look real. Also, when she came out of hospital, she was holding the baby. Do you remember that this happened on both occasions when she came out of hospital? Her and William came out of the hospital. She didn't look particularly enamored with her new baby. There seemed to be very little maternal bonding going on there. She was holding the child as if she was a midwife holding someone else's baby.
Right.
She's wearing this sort of Stepford wife smile, and I thought, what's going on here? Didn't look quite right.
And of course, with your suggestion that something's going to happen to divert away from the 20th anniversary of Diana's death, of course we had a grandson, her alleged grandson, going to school on his first day, and I think today the news has been that he's had his first shit on one of them little toilets that they have in school, but he had to wipe his arse on £20 notes because they were they removed the £50 notes simply because they wanted to be more in touch with the common people during the time of austerity.
Oh God! Oh, wonderful! The kind of stories that come out are just unbelievable. Yeah, Prince George in school, he's gone to, I imagine he hasn't gone to the local comprehensive. I think he's gone to a very elite kindergarten somewhere in London. And of course, he'll be surrounded by bodyguards, and they'll be careful about what other children interact with him, if they don't want them stealing his rusks and things like that.
Or any coloured ones near him.
Oh, I probably not, I imagine. That's right. I expect that. I doubt if he'd be allowed to mix with the hoi polloi. But he's and there was also the announcement that Kate had been awarded some compensation for these topless photos that were allegedly taken of her.
What does she need compensation for? Why does she need compensation? An apology would be enough, surely.
Yeah, it was something to do. Well, it was because they photographed her illegally, and there was a big fuss about it. And I mean, I did think there was something a bit odd about that, not least because of the timing. The fuss about Kate and this topless photo I saw the topless photo, incidentally, and to be honest, she's not much to look at. I think she looks a bit anorexic, and like her poor late lamented mother-in-law. But it came out at the same time as there was a big scandal to do with the 7/7 bombing, and there was an inquest, and the News of the World was covering it. But at the same time, there was the phone hacking scandal broke out, and then this broke out. It's a complicated story, but I suspect that the Kate Middleton topless picture was something of a distraction, and I think it's maybe been used again as a distraction because, again, this has happened at the same time. This news story came out at the same time as it was announced she was having a new baby, and that George had gone to school.
Mm.
So the way they play things, the way the media introduces certain stories and stresses certain others, and there's more. I mean, do you remember the nurse who committed suicide?
Yeah, someone mentioned that in the chat room, actually. Anon 4344, suspicious death of that nurse after George's birth. That's
right. Jacinta Saldana was actually a ward sister on the ward where Kate was actually staying, or allegedly staying. And it's so crazy because some Australian comedians on a radio show decided to phone up the ward and pretend to be the Queen and Prince Philip or Prince Charles or something like that. And which they didn't do very convincingly, but they did get through to the nurse Saldana, and apparently she was so shocked by what happened, she committed suicide in her room at the staff accommodation. She was found hanging in her room. I'm dubious about that. Firstly, I can't believe a nurse, especially considering she herself had a family. She had everything to live for. She herself had a husband and children. Also, nurses are pretty tough. They're pretty resilient. The things they have to go through and the things they have to see and do, I wouldn't even repeat. And yet, it's not nice to even think about it. They're not the kind of people who would be traumatized by some idiots from Australia phoning them up and playing a prank, especially to that extent.
Yeah, not to the extent that you're going to actually kill yourself, end your life.
Yeah. I know so. I mean, there's several stories about why. There's some people say she was killed because she found out something that she wasn't supposed to know. Some people said it was a ritual sacrifice for the new baby. Who knows? But I mean, I did actually. I went and I put some flowers on outside the hospital because I put on it. You know, I don't think this is. I don't think it's a suicide. I think she was bumped off for whatever reason.
Mm. It does smack of also the same case with the similar situation with the I know this is a completely different case and I'm going off in a completely different tangent, but the Madeleine McCann case where we had that woman who was doorstepped who had allegedly been trolling Kate and Jerry McCann on Twitter, or had been saying putting conspiracy theories up and saying that they had something to do with it. She was doorstepped by Sky. Then she was found hanging in an hotel.
That's right.
It's a similar sort of situation, isn't it? It doesn't quite ring true.
No, I mean, firstly, when women and men commit suicide differently, and generally, I mean, women tend to take drugs, like they tend to overdose on drugs. Men are more likely to hang themselves. So hanging is an unusual suicide method for a woman. Also, I mean, again, this is an amazing coincidence because the lady you're talking about, they said she was trolling the McCanns, but actually, the things she was saying, I think, have some validity, and that is that we should be suspicious of Kate and Jerry McCann and what happened to their child. Now, Richard D. Hall has studied this in detail and made some amazing documentaries about this, which I think everyone should see. Because they're very long. I mean, he's made about 4-hour ones, so it'll take you a long time to watch them all. But do watch them all, because I think what I think happened was, based on this research and what other people have done as well, is unfortunately Madeleine McCann died. She died in her hotel room. In the hotel room in Portugal when they were on holiday. I don't know how it was, whether it was murder or whether it was an accident or whether she was sick or whatever happened. And unfortunately, the parents decided to pretend that she'd been kidnapped.
Yeah.
Now, why the police? Well, firstly, the chief of police in the local area, a guy called Colonel Amaral, he voiced his suspicions that what was going on. He's the guy who should have really had the say, but he wasn't. He was basically told to shut up, and higher powers were going to get involved. Another person called Shaw Taylor, who was actually a former police detective who presented a criminal investigation program on BBC television.
Oh yeah, what was that called?
It was like Crime. No, it was on ITV. Police 5.
Police 5. That's the
very
one.
similar.
Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah, very, very similar to Crime Watch, which is still on today.
Wasn't it regional to London?
I'm not sure, but he himself said, the McCanns have questions to answer which they're not being asked. And the investigation was taken over at a very, very high level by Interpol and by the government. I mean, even Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister at the time, was involved in this. So why this happened, I don't know. I mean, Richard has made a new video about this, which I haven't seen yet. But that's the big question, because this was covered up not only by the family, but by people very, very high up. And it was made into this amazing cause celeb. It was in all the newspapers. Little girl being kidnapped. Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. And every time it sort of went down a little bit and people forgot about it, there was another revelation. Madeleine's been seen in Morocco. Madeleine's been seen in the south of France. We think she might have been taken to Ireland. Do you remember these headlines?
Yeah.
Madeleine sadly is dead. Her body, I don't know where her body is, but you see, they put some sniffer dogs went into the apartment where they were staying and distinctly detected the smell of a dead body in there that had been in there in the past.
Mm. Yeah, the cadaver dogs. That was quite compelling evidence, wasn't it?
Totally. I mean, the dogs were also were also shown a number of items, some of which had been in the apartment. And again, they responded to the smell of a body on the items, only on the items that had been in that apartment.
Mm.
So it's likely that a dead body was kept in that apartment for a while, and
also in the back of the car as well, wasn't there? There was in the back of the hire car. There was it was smell, and also on Kate's clothes, which I think they gave the excuse that because she was a doctor, she'd been around people that had died, and that's why it was on her clothes, which I thought was, I mean, surely she washed her clothes before she went on holiday.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, this is what I used to do. I used to have to be around people that had died or dying when I was a porter, but I had a uniform which I took. I didn't wear it outside the hospital.
No.
And this is why doctors wear white coats, or they wear theatre scrubs. They don't wear their normal clothes when they're in a walk around the hospital, because they take all the germs home with them and give them to the family. Or vice versa, or bring germs in and give it to the patients. No. There's absolutely not. I think Kate had been handling a dead body. They'd had a dead body in the car. We can imagine that they took Madeleine's body to wherever they needed to and disposed of it, or maybe they buried her in the woods or something. I don't know. It's pretty awful. I mean, you may wonder, well, how could they have even thought about that after they've lost their child? But maybe they're psychopathic. Maybe they don't have any feelings. And
well, judging by the people that came to rally round them, I think they might actually be psychopathic, because I think even Gordon Brown himself got involved, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean the McCanns, for example. I mean a lot of the emotion they showed was quite transparently, I think, not very sincere. And I've seen this with other suspicious events. There's been other events which have been very suspicious, especially in Australia. There's been a couple of very high profile cases in Australia where the perpetrator claims that they know someone who's disappeared, or they've been killed accidentally or something, yet they don't seem to show any emotion at the loss of the person who's died.
Yeah.
And I see the same thing with the McCanns. Unfortunately, I see that same reaction. They're in front of the cameras and they're talking about it quite normally, or the emotion they're showing is quite. They're not very good actors, these people.
No. We saw that again with Mick Philpott. Again, it's so simple to spot once you realise what you're looking for. With Mick Philpott, when they killed all their kids, six. He's just killed 6 of his own kids.
Yeah.
And he can't even shed a tear.
It's the family of Joe Cox, the MP, who was allegedly killed just before the Brexit vote. That's another example. Her husband, her parents, her sisters, they I think they need to get better actors to do these jobs. They really do. Or either that, or the media is very, very confident in its ability to control the minds of most of the people. So most people won't notice these little errors. Whereas those of us like us who are suspicious tinfoil hat wearing loonies, we do.
Yeah, again, another example is the Sandy Hook one, where you see the guy who's supposed to have just lost his child, and he's all giggling and laughing, and then suddenly it's action, and then he's rubbing his eyes, he's trying to act as though he's injured. And also the Manchester one as well. The Manchester one, for me, that was the most bizarre one. Was after the Manchester attack. It was a week later, and I think we had Nick Colostrom on just after I made this point to Nick Colostrom that they were sat on GMTV or whatever it's called, and they're smiling and they're saying we're going to get married as a tribute to our daughter, because they've not been married, and they've got great big massive grins on the face. And I made the point to Nick Colostrom that I've not had a smile on my face a week like that, a week after I've lost a tenner. Mind. Look at the daughter. I mean, I can't imagine. There's just no way. It just seems like again, you get these when Holly and Jessica were missing. I don't even think they've been found, but they were invited to be guests at Manchester United, and they were all on TV there. The Reece Jones one, where they were all Everton fans, and they'd been invited to Liverpool, and they went out onto the pitch, and it just seems to me, if my daughter's been killed, I don't want to see anybody or anything for months and months.
No,
these people seem to be. Is that just a representation of the narcissistic society that we're in, and the narcissistic behaviour that people expect of people, and people then fulfil that because they feel it's expected? Or do you think that that's just because they're acting?
I think they're acting. I mean, Joe Cox's husband was particularly very, very extremely the way firstly, the day after she was shot, she was allegedly shot in the streets in Batley in Spain, which is her constituency. She was shot by a guy called Thomas Mera, and Nick Colostrom has done an entire analysis of his trial. I believe, and he believes he's innocent. This guy, what's the name of her husband? I can't remember his name, but he went on TV. He was going from one TV studio to another, saying how wonderful his wife was and how we should love like Joe and we should honor her memory and stuff like this, with a completely straight face, I might add. Why is he not at home with the children? They have 3 children. Sure, don't you think those kids need their father at a time like this?
Well, but it just shows you, doesn't it? If it is a real thing, if it is a real event, it shows you how detached these people are from reality and from feeling empathy and emotion for other people, even their own children.
Yeah, it's or either that, or they are pretending. They're pretending that the person who is dead really is dead. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, but if you give them the benefit of the doubt either way, it don't look good for them, does it? Really?
No. Either way, it's a very, very bad sign. It's something that should alert people. It's something that the people that I would be looking for as a sign that I was being lied to, and that a fake story was being spun to manipulate the way I think and feel, to make me behave in a certain way when it came, for instance, to voting in the European Union referendum.
Yeah, that was clearly what that was about, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it failed. Luckily, we did get the Leave vote, but I mean, I suspect that if it hadn't been for Joe Cox's supposed killing, it would have probably been a much greater Leave. There'd probably be much more of a Leave majority, I'd say.
Well, Ben, we've got about 5 minutes left before end of the show. So, anything you want to bring up in this last 5 minutes? Anything you want to tell us? Give us again the skinny on your talk on Saturday. Is it Saturday that you're doing it?
It is. I'm speaking on Saturday. I'm scheduled to speak on Saturday morning, but do come for the whole weekend because there's more amazing speakers, including Kathleen Marden, who is the niece of Betty Hill, of Betty and Barney Hill fame, the most famous alien abductees in the world. There's several other excellent speakers. Professor Robert Jacobs. There's Andrew Johnson, who I believe you've had on the show. There's Roberto Panozzi, Francisco Correa, several other famous ufologists. There's always a great social life there too. Holmfirth is a lovely place. If you want to know more, you can either come along or you can check out my website. I have a website which is HPANWO, HPANWO, Hospital Partners Against the New World Order. And I have a number of websites connected to that. I have my YouTube channel, my own radio show, like yourself. I have a radio show. And I'm also writing a new book. I've almost finished my new book, but I wrote a book last year, which is available now, called Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, which is all about the UFO issue. If you're interested in UFOs and the Roswell conspiracy and things like that, then that's the book for you. Would
it be a good in for somebody who's new to this?
Yes, it would. It's a fictionalization of the Roswell event, and it's a question. It's an alternative history. It says, what if it had gone differently? That's the thesis of the story.
Right.
So what if there had been no cover-up? How would it have been different?
Okay. I need to get that book, Ben. I'm sure I'm going to try and get over. I can't come for the whole weekend, but I'm going to try and get over on the Sunday. So if you're going to still be there, we'll be able to
I will.
have a point. And
yep, I'll be there all weekend. I'll be there the whole time.
Marvelous. Well, I know Andy's going to be there, so I think there's a few tickets left as well, isn't there?
A handful, but literally just a handful. So if you want one, get one, because they are on the verge, or point of selling out. It may already be too late. Just check the website and see how you get on. UFOtruthmagazine.co.uk.
And that's what I was just about to say. And you're PANWO.
www.hpanwo.blogspot.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fantastic tonight.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
I've really enjoyed it as well. It's been superb. I know Andy will have enjoyed it, and I can see that Kev, our producer, thank you to Kev, our producer tonight. He's enjoyed it as well. Well, it's just about time for us to say goodbye for this week. I'd just like to say, just on a little point of next week on the 18th, I'm doing Raconteurs 2 on Monday, the 18th, which we've got Neil Sanders. He's going to be coming and talking about his book. I've got his book. It's going to take me for ages to get through it because it's absolutely huge, but I'll get through as much as I can, and hopefully we'll get the we'll definitely have Neil Sanders on anyway. He can explain anything that I've not read. But thank you to Kev. Thank you to you, Ben.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on again.
Always welcome, my friend, and always an easy 2 hours. It just flies by.
It has, hasn't it? Yeah.
To coin Andy's phrase. All right, so I'll be back on Raconteurs 2 on Monday with Neil Sanders. I'll be reminding you that this world is for everybody and not just for Aid Hardy. Hopefully, Aidy will be back tomorrow, I think. We'll be back in the country tomorrow. Anyway, I'm going to see what we're going to be able to do to get him back on the radio, because it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I think he's got a lot of stuff out of his system, and he'll be able to get back into the flow again, because we know that he's really got some. He's got a great insight, and he's a lot better interviewer than me. So thanks, Ben. Thanks, Kev. We'll see you again next week. Ta-ra a bit. Bye. Thanks for listening.